Hey folks, so our next learning target in our pursuit to our larger learning target of being able to analyze a text by citing and textual evidence and to support us in order to support our own ideas is to actually do this idea of analysis. To analyze means to break something down and examine a text. So let's dig into that a little bit further. So if you think about analysis, what I'm always brought down to is what my mom used to do for a living is she was a lab technician for cancer patients. And so she would analyze their blood. And literally, she'd take the blood from a cancer patient and put it in the centrifuge and spin it around, and then literally split that blood into its different parts. Like, okay, if I spin this fast enough, the blood is going to separate out into like, here are all the red blood cells, here are all the white blood cells, here's all the plasma, and here's all the other things floating in the plasma. So I would break down, or my mother would break down that blood um, in order to see what it's made up of, in order to understand, okay, here's what's going on in the patient's body at this moment, right? Um, I love this definition is to analyze something is to look at something critically in order to grasp its essence. What is making this um, thing what it is based on its pieces and parts, right? So that's what it means to analyze, is to break something down. We've got to look at the individual pieces, see what they are, see how they fit together to create something maybe bigger than their own individual elements, right? So when we're doing analysis, we can use some of those skills that we practiced in inference. So don't feel like you need to jump in head first and start connecting all of the dots all at once, right? Start simple. When you're analyzing something, especially a piece of text, start with what do you notice, piece by piece. Like, I thought this line was interesting, and I thought this idea was relevant, and here's what I think the theme is for this entire piece, or here's the main argument of a text. And then just start to connect those dots, right? Once you have something broken down, then you can start drawing lines to this, to this, to this. And keep doing that until you start to address some of the various sources of tension or complexity within a work. That's where we're going to start getting to what a poem or a short story or an article is really about, when we start recognizing this idea of complexity within the different observations that we've made. So let's take a look back at our poem, our Deer Hunt, again. So as I read this, it is kind of a complicated poem. Like, there's a lot going on here. So let's deconstruct it first. Let's break it down. And so some of the things that I initially notice about it is that it's a poem, but it doesn't look like a poem, right? This is just in a paragraph format. It's very different. So I'm going to make that observation and notice it. I'm noticing that there's some family relationships that are being focused on, right? The warden is a cousin, and it talks about like other men in the community who are really excited about this. I noticed that the author is kind of nervous about the danger of nature. Doesn't seem like they feel really comfortable outside, even, especially holding a gun. Um, I noticed that this poem is kind of about acceptance, where he wants to be a man. He wants to be accepted into this community of men who are, you know, yelping cheers on ridge to ridge, like running around in nature. And because of that desire for acceptance, I have a feeling that this author feels insufficient and uncomfortable, kind of in pursuit of defining and defending their own masculinity, right? Since I, to be a man, had taken one in regards to the gun. So I noticed all of those things independently, right? It's not like I took a look at this poem and was able to see all of this at once, right? Just piece by piece, I started writing down what did I recognize about this poem. And then once I have all these pieces and parts, I can kind of take a look at distilling these down into what are they all pointing at? What can they help me understand about this poem? And at least in my interpretation, this poem is all about finding and kind of defending yourself from this idea of discomfort. And I can even start drawing connections and analyzing the relationship between, the poem's format and the idea of discomfort, right? This poem feels uncomfortable because it's different, right? This doesn't look like a poem in the same way that this author doesn't feel like, the normal boy or man in this community, right? There's a connection between the poem's format and the discomfort, maybe even like the poem format and the masculinity. Like he doesn't feel manly in the traditional ways that men do in this community, because it doesn't seem like he enjoys or wants to be outside in nature at all. But there is still an element of, but he wants to be accepted, right? I want to be a man. I want to show you that I can do this, or at least I want to be accepted for who I am. And in order to do that, maybe I have to change who I am. So it's all about finding out where my level of comfort is in believing in myself. So this would be an example of kind of a graphic organizer that you could use to help you with analysis. Um, so remember, as a kind of a final idea, is that analysis is to grasp the essence of something. What truly makes this thing be what it is by looking at its pieces and its parts. I spelled parts wrong there. So like think about analyzing the layers of rock in Monument Valley or the Grand Canyon, right? You can see all these individual layers of dirt and dust and rock, and together they add up to make these beautiful natural formations. Same thing is happening in your own lives. Same thing is happening in music and in literature, where the sum of the parts of something that we love is usually greater uh, than what they would be individually. All right, good luck, folks.